Today's headline is The Miracle of San Felipe. The subheadline says, one of the unwritten legends common to old New Mexico. This article was written by Charles F. Loomis. It says, I hope someday to see a real history of the United States, a history not written in a closet from other one-sided affairs, but based on a knowledge of the breadth of our history and a disposition to do it justice. A book which will realize that the early history of this wonderful country is not limited to a narrow strip on the Atlantic seaboard, but that it began in the great Southwest, and that before the oldest of the Pilgrim Fathers had been born, swarthy Spanish heroes were colonizing what is now the United States, in their little corner of which they suffered for 350 years such awful dangers and hardships as our Saxon forefathers did not dream of. I hope to see such a history, which will do justice to perhaps the most wonderful pioneers the world has ever produced. But it has not come yet. Why, there is not even one history which gives the correct date of the founding of Santa Fe, which was a Spanish city more than a decade before the landing at Plymouth Rock. When that ideal history is written, you will find thrilling matter in the story of New Mexico for more than 3 centuries, and particularly in the bloody years from 1680 to 1700. The Pueblo Indians, those gentle, industrious house dwellers who remain with us to this day, the most wonderful aboriginal race on earth, had received the white strangers hospitably, had been their friends against the savage tribes, and patiently had shouldered their growing oppressions for a century and a half. But in 1680, they rose in red rebellion and swept the mailed invaders away before them. Ah, what years those were, of whose lightning flashes of revolt, followed by sullen peace, and then another thunderclap, the great outside world has never half known, of whose most hideous tragedies, of whose sublimest heroisms, we have record only here and there, a bare unbraggart line, scant as the rude cross which marks the last of a great life. After the long and wonderful war, wonderful not for numbers of men and oceans of spilled blood, but for the achievements of a tiny army in which Don Diego de Vargas Zapata Lujan reconquered the awful wilderness of New Mexico, the hardy Spanish settlers enjoyed nearly 2 years of peace. Their quaint little colony at Santa Fe, with its ironclad soldiers clanking through the warped streets, was beginning to feel secure. So were the heroic priests, who had taken their lives in their hands and settled themselves alone in the Pueblo towns to convert the suspicious natives to Christianity. But in 1696, fresh calamities arose. The priest Antonio Fairfin had brought 700 fanegas, about 70,000 pounds of corn, for the support of the garrison and the people. But it was misappropriated, probably by Vargas himself, and a fearful famine ensued. The starving Spaniards ate all their domestic animals, down to the very cats, boiled rawhides and old bones, and finally roamed the mountains like hungry beasts. Over 200 of the scant population died, and many owed their survival only to the Indians, to whom they hired themselves and their families as menials. Seeing the Spaniards so weakened, the Pueblos believed that their time had come to throw off the yoke forever, and 14 Pueblo towns joined in a rebellion which broke June 4, 1696. It was a dreadful day. Brave Fray Francisco de Jesus Maria, who had gone far back into the inhospitable mountains to carry the gospel to the Indians of Jene, was clubbed to death by his flock. At San Cristobal, near Santa Cruz, the people slew their gentle missionary, Fray José de Arvizu, and in pretty San Ildefonso, the Pueblos fired the little convent which had been erected, and the free priests, Fray Francisco Corbera, Fray Antonio Carbonelli, and Fray Antonio Marino, perished in the fire. Besides these 5 priests, 34 other Spaniards were slain on that bitter day. So much is real history. Now for an interesting story of that red 4th of June, which does not appear in any history, nor in any ancient record, but is sacredly preserved and devoutly believed by the Indians of San Felipe, a legend which they have handed down from father to son for nearly 200 years. San Felipe is a pretty little pueblo, 40-odd miles south of Santa Fe. In front, the hurrying current of the Rio Grande, the fierce river of the north, washes it. Behind, it is crowded by the gloomy volcanic walls of the Black Mesa. Up and down the river stretch broad fields of corn and wheat and rustling orchards. To quench your summer thirst, irrigation ditches come singing as they run. Atop the frowning tableland, the gray ruins of the ancient stone church look wistfully down upon the pretty scene, and upon its adobe successor, radiant with whitewash and consequential with balcony and quaint belfries. The most interesting man in San Felipe is Teodosio Duran, the old ex-governor, for each Pueblo town is a republic by itself, electing its governor, sheriff, councilors, and other officers by ballot annually. Teodosio is about 64 years old, I should say. He doesn't know. Dark, short, thin, and an epitome of wrinkles and legends. And this is the story of the Miracle of San Felipe, as he tells it in excellent Spanish. At the first conquest, the Spanish brought with them many padres, priests, who went out to all the pueblos. Many died and many were killed, and at last came the Great Rebellion of 1680. When the Spanish made the second conquest, they found but 2 priests left. One of these went very far away, but the other made a church in Cochiti and stayed there. The Indians of the northern pueblos were very much enemies of the Spanish, and most of all the people of Cochiti, San Ildefonso, and Santo Domingo were angry with them. In a little while, the principales of those pueblos held a junta in Cochiti and made it up to kill the padre and drive out the Spanish. The sacristan of Cochiti was a good Christian, and when he heard this, he went running by night to the convent and told the padre, "Padre, I am your friend. They are making to kill you, but I will save you if I can. But you must go immediately. I will go with you as far as I can and get home before day, for they will kill me if they know." So the sacristan carried the padre across the river on his back, and they took the Camino Real highway past Santo Domingo and where Algodones now is. Here the sacristan said, "I go no further. This is the road, and you must save yourself." It was already near day, and the padre saw he must hide. There was a little island on the river with cottonwoods very thick on it, and he went to hide there till another night. Now, by the grace of God, on that very day, the Pueblo of San Felipe was to make a great hunt, and already before the sun had come, the sentinels were going to all the high places to watch for game, and one was on the top of the mesa just below that island. When it grew more day, he saw something black moving among the cottonwoods, and thought, "Good luck, for already I see a bear." But in truth, it was the padre getting a drink. The sentinel made his hunt signal, and in a very little time, all the hunters were around the island. When they found it was no bear, but the padre from Cochiti, they were astonished, but he told them all that had happened. Then at once the principales held council on the island, and when all had spoken, they said, "We will save him and take him to our pueblo." Then they took off his black robes and put upon him the shirt and calzoncillos and moccasins of one of the Indians, and painted his face and hands. But when they were coming to the town, they met many of the Cochitenos hunting for him and asking, "Have you met the priest?" They said, "No, we have not met him." But even then, one of the Cochitenos recognized him in his paint, and they demanded him with injurious words. Refusing, there was a great fight, which lasted even to the pueblo, but they of San Felipe came safely inside, with the padre. Then the Cochitenos went away for help, and next day came again with many more of their own pueblo and of Santo Domingo, surrounding the town and wounding some. So, as the enemy were many, the people of San Felipe retreated to the top of the mesa and made a fort there. The others besieged them there for many days, and soon the water and the food which they had carried up with them began to be very little, and then the water was all gone. And when they knew no more of how to live without water, the old men made a junta and brought the padre to it. When he had heard all, he hunted for paper, and at last he found a very little piece in his wallet. Upon this he made a writing with charcoal, and told the sacristan to put the paper in a certain spot, with the writing upward, and stones on it, that it might not blow away. Then he made prayer for 3 days, night and day, and afterwards sent the sacristan to bring the paper again. And in truth, there was now also writing upon the other side. Who wrote it? Quien sabe? But I think the angels. When he had read the new writing, he told the sacristan to bring him a piece of topaz, volcanic glass, and this he broke upon a rock, till it was sharp like a knife. And when the people had brought all their jars and gourds, he made his arm bare, and cut it with the stone knife, and held it stretched out, and from the wound ran streams of water, the same as clear river, and filled all the vessels. When all were full, it ceased to run, and all the people fell down, and gave thanks to God. A great while the enemy remained, but always when the water jars were empty, the padre filled them again with pure water from his arm, till at last the Cochitanos were tired and went away. Then the people came down again to the Pueblo, taking Padre in great honor, and they were in peace, for after that there was no more war. But to this day, we make a sacred fiesta for the day of the Padre, and God has been very good to us for that, more than to any of the Pueblos that killed their priests. No, we do not know his name. It is very long ago, and that has been lost. I was very much interested in Teodosio's story, and my search to discover how much of it is true, aside from the palpable superstition of the miracle, has not been entirely vain. The name of the good priest was Fray Alonso Jimenez de Cisneros. Some interesting letters written by him are still in existence. He was stationed at Cochiti and did escape thence by the help of the sacristan on the eve of the uprising. The people of San Felipe did receive him and protect him with a self-sacrificing loyalty really remarkable when we consider their surroundings and the risks they took. So far as the account of the siege goes, there is no historical evidence to corroborate it. There were some skirmishes over the matter, but nothing more serious so far as we can learn from authentic sources. But of this at least we may be sure, that the kindly Pueblos of San Felipe saved Fray Cisneros from a fearful death, with great danger to themselves, and that they devoutly and reverently celebrate still the anniversary of the day on which, according to their legend, he saved San Felipe. This story came from the great state of Massachusetts, being reported in the Boston Weekly Globe of September 6, 1890. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.